Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming!
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming. Winter is coming.
That's cold. Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming. You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
Oh, that's all right. I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
I always love that intro. That is, of course, the specially crafted exclusive intro for Russ Winter of winterwatch.net, who joins us every last Friday of every month. And we talk about content from his website, www.winterwatch.net, which is an absolute treasure trove of deep research, a lot of which is based on loose ends of the 20th century. You know, the people, the events, the scandals, and who they are, how they got there, and what are the missing pieces around it all. And Russ has done a tremendous job at filling in a lot of blanks. And today we're going to look at the Dreyfus Affair, which is actually something I didn't know a lot about. And Russ has spent a lot of time digging through, exhuming the bones of the Dreyfus Affair. And so we're going to get into that today, and we're going to toss it around and why we believe it's important in terms of historical knowledge and historical context. But before I do that, before I bring Russ on, I do have to give a shout out to, of course, our sponsor, which is True Hemp Science. And True Hemp Science is a company that specializes in, of course, hemp, CBD. And in my estimation, some of the best CBD products that I've had the opportunity to ingest and even put on my body. I have one of their salves, which I think is really, really good. So I'll give you a visual here. Oh, I've got to go in now and say, yeah, I'm over 21. I sure am. Look at that. Chris is so good at protecting the youth of America. I think he has to do it. Anyway, not that CBD would be terrible, but I guess there are laws that dictate who can and cannot partake in CBD. Well, if you are over 18 years of age, is it 18 or 21? I'm not sure. But if you're of age, you can go to truehempscience.com and you can sample, well, at least virtually, their products and look around and poke around. And they've got all kinds of stuff. Russ and I were talking about sleep aids, and he was mentioning to me how effective melatonin is for him. And I've taken melatonin in the past. And for me, melatonin is a bit hit or miss. For some people, man, it's just perfect. I always get the sleep hangover with melatonin. So I take the sleep gummies, which work like a charm. And then I pop a little yellow kratom so I can deal with my body when I wake up. I don't have any stiff joints. That's my cocktail. But the CBD, the CBD gummies, the sleep gummies are a big part of it. And of course, we have the moon dust, which I don't know if Chris has any moon dust, but that's really good for waking up. And during the day, the 19 is really good. I have the 19 right here by my studio couch, and that's a kind of a daily supplement. So there's all kinds of CBD products that you can check out at True Hemp Science. Spend $100 plus, you're going to get some free goodies with the shipping. With the shipping of your product, you'll get free goodies. Chris will throw some stuff in there. $150 or more, and you will get free shipping. So 150 plus, you get the free shipping, the free goodies, and you can always call True Hemp Science. You'll probably get Chris on the phone. You have any questions? He's very generous with his time. He'll be happy to share any kind of information. If you're on the fence or need to know more, it's an amazing concept with a business, to be honest with you. You get to talk to the owner, and the owner will take you through things. What an amazing, brilliant idea. All right. Speaking of amazing and brilliant, let's bring Mr. Winter on. And where is he? Let's see. Let's get him in the let's get him out of the waiting room. And we're gonna ask him to unmute. And let's see if we get the video going too. There he is.
Yeah.
Our man.
You're the king of the backgrounds. You're probably the best guy on YouTube, if not the internet, in terms of backgrounds. Look at that thing of beauty.
The thing I love about this is a postcard from the 1900 Paris World's Fair.
Yeah, there's so much cool stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, people know that I'm kind of a Tartaria freak, and this fits right into the whole Tartaria Easter egg. In fact, it even looks like an Easter egg. And we have these really interesting columns here, which are telluric columns with possibly Antiquitech on top of it. And look at the size of this. If this is scale, I mean, look at the size of this, Russ.
Yeah,
so here you have your Parisians, and then you have this. And they had all kinds of buildings like this during the world. It's interesting. You and I were talking about. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but I went on a hunt for all these World's Fairs that were happening during the latter part of the 19th century and the beginning part of the 20th century. And you could go on Wikipedia. There's a whole list of these World's Fairs, and even Metz, which, we're going to talk about the Alsace-Lorraine region, had a World's Fair, not quite the same as the Paris World's Fair or the London World's Fair or the Chicago World's Fair, but there's so many of these World's Fairs going on at the turn of the century. And that's a discussion and topic for a whole nother show. Have you ever been to a World's Fair, any of the modern ones?
No, I missed the Seattle World's Fair in the 60s. So you were living in Washington. Weren't you living in Washington then too at that time? Yeah, I think the Seattle Fair was just before we moved there.
Right.
Moved there in 68. And the Chicago Fair, I've seen the remnants of the Chicago Fair. There's not much left. They just kind of leave one little building.
Right.
And Seattle left the needle. That's about it.
Yep. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I went to the New York World's Fair, 1964, and they still have that big globe. What do they call it? The Globosphere or something like that. That's still there. But that was cool. That was all about getting people geared up for the tomorrow world and corporations selling all this great technology, which is going to make everybody's life so much easier. And then I went to the Spokane World's Fair,
right.
Which was my first experience with an IMAX movie. I almost threw up. It's like, whoa, this is a bit much. It was all about motion, and you're right in there. It was exciting, but it was a little queasy. And it was folky. It was nice and folky. It wasn't like the New York World's Fair, but I love stuff like that. Now I guess the World's Fair will be happening in the metaverse. I guess that's the next version of the World's Fair. So how's it going? You're our man in Prague. What's happening in Prague?
Oh, not much going on here. Yeah, we could probably skip a report on Prague. It's nothing happening. Not really much. They got a new president. The president's kind of a pro-NATO guy. So they're kind of drawing the Czech Republic a little bit more into the anti-Russian fold.
Into the scrum. Sometimes nothing going on is a good thing. Right? If there's nothing to report back, that's not a bad thing. So we'll take that as for now, a good sign. we're going to get into this Dreyfus affair. That's going to be the meat of our show today. And before I jump in and we jump in, I just want to let people know and remind them that you can find what we're talking about today and a lot more of Russ's work over at www.winterwatch.net. And if you're not subscribing to get his RSS feed, you're missing out on a daily or close to daily dose of historical and current topics that are really important to understand.
I kind of think on our shows, the topic matter, it's wouldn't hurt to do a read along. Just go to the article, follow us along a little bit, kind of see the links, and kind of learn. I mean, that's how I learn.
Yeah, and when
visual and audio.
Yeah, and when we go there, I do the share screen, so we scroll through that in real time as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can consume that content. So I wanted to play this clip of the Dreyfus. There was a movie, an actual Hollywood movie made out of this, and the lead actor is also the director, and it's Mel Ferrer, who I believe also played Cyrano de Bergerac. He's a very well-known actor. I think his son, no, it's Jose Ferrer. Mel's his son. I always get the two mixed up. And Mel, his son, was a pretty well-known actor as well. So let me cue this up here. I already have it queued up. And it's probably maybe about 5 minutes long, but it sets the table for everything that we're about to talk about. And it's through Hollywood's lens. So let's check out.
Yeah, Hollywood, that's official stuff.
Yeah, let's check out the Hollywood version
in terms of how our perception of our world.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that create a version of reality, don't they? Here we go.
Will you give this card to your military attaché, please? This way, sir. Thank you. The Major wants to see the military attaché. The military attaché will see you, Major. Colonel von Schwarzkoppen? Yes, Major? Ferdinand Esterhazy, 74th Infantry Regiment, stationed at Rouen. Sit down, sir. Thank you. Please. Thank you very much. Yes, Major? I have some information to sell. What sort of information? Military. French military secrets. But you are a French officer. I'm also in debt. My wife is ill. My affairs, to say the least, are not in order. It is either suicide or this business. You see, I prefer to live.
My government is not interested in corrupting a French officer.
But suppose the officer is already corrupt.
Good day, sir.
Here's a list of some of the documents I have for sale. The new artillery manual. The design for the hydraulic brake on the 120mm gun. And the plans for the defense of the Meuse forts. I also have great hopes of being transferred to the General Staff Intelligence Section. Do you understand? I can be reached at this address. Colonel, I look forward to an extremely happy and profitable association.
Esterhazy. Captain, prepare to Berlin. Colonel Miller.
So the maid is a spy.
Right.
Here comes Dreyfus.
So the claim was that Dreyfus was a quote unquote artillery officer. And of course, this guy's Esterhazy is trying to sell the specs on the 220 millimeter.
The wine was brought. Her mother joined us.
But he was not an artillery officer. He was intelligence from day one.
Good morning.
All right, here we go.
Good morning.
And how are we today?
I can hardly get my eyes open.
Hello, Dreyfus.
Good morning, Captain Brossard.
Well, Dreyfus, what sort of night did you have?
I worked on the plans for the maneuvers.
Oh, above all, Dreyfus, not too much zeal. If you're not careful, you'll be a general.
General? Why not Marshal of France?
Come in.
Major Picard.
Come in, Dreyfus.
I finished the report, sir.
So soon? You must have worked all night. Well done, Dreyfus. Such short notice.
Thank you, Major.
How are you getting on, generally?
Well, I think. I do my best.
I know. It's been awkward.
Not really. Anyway, I hope in time it won't make so much difference. My being a Jew.
All armies dislike change on principle. And it is something of an innovation to have a Jewish officer on the general staff. But I'm glad I recommended you.
Thank you, Major.
All right. So what I thought was interesting about that clip is that they're establishing some things very early on about Dreyfus and his character. Number one, he has character. He's not out partying like the other officers. He's diligent. He's at home working on the battle plan. And then straight out of the gate, they bring up this, this fact that he's a Jew, right? And so they're essentially saying, hey, look, this is kind of a new thing because we haven't really done this before. But at the same time, they're also contrasting his character and work ethic versus the other guys who aren't.
Yeah.
And
there needs to be some facts about the story. First of all, he was never an artillery officer ever.
Right,
he was
right.
intelligence, so he didn't have it. The story of him getting a hold of they tried to frame him for passing on this specs on this 120 millimeter cannon, and then the story that these Jews were like a rare breed in the French army or had no real representation or no real power is total nonsense. So keep in mind that the secular modernists were the ones in power at this time. This is 1894. So the Third Republic was established in 1870. There were 10 Jewish generals in the French army at this point, which is overrepresented by 15-1. And I would suggest that the Republicans and not the right wing held the deep state levers to pull this affair off. So the notion that there was a clique of alleged anti-Semites in the intelligence apparatus that had the means and controls to set Dreyfus up is improbable on his face. So that's kind of the starting point. So already this movie just totally factually misrepresented things.
Right, but what they're trying to do is set up his character. Like that's that first scene is his character is impeccable, right? His character is impeccable. The other guy's character, and I haven't seen the whole movie, I'm sure will be in doubt as the movie progresses.
Yeah, Esterhazy has been portrayed as a big villain, and he was a co-conspirator. He was a co-conspirator. I mean, we'll get into some of the details of who these sketchy characters are and how they're kind of connected. That's really important to understand about this affair. But the fact of the matter is that 120 millimeter gun, the French are getting ready to sell it. They had a really good weapon that they marketed around the world. I mean, they ended up selling it down in the Balkans, supplied the Serbians and that crowd down there, kind of countering the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So the 120 millimeter gun had a lot of history from this day forward. There was no secret. They pretty much put it out in the open. It wasn't a big secret that needed to be sold to the Germans.
Right.
Nonsense.
Right. Well, let's go to your website.
It's storytelling. You see, today you can go back and look at this stuff. But when they ran this scam, and I'll call it a scam, people didn't have the ability to really cross-check this nonsense.
So as you were mentioning about bringing up a visual, let's go to your website. And we can give people a visual. So
I get kind of worked up over this one, by the way, because it's just such.
All right, let it rip, man. Let it rip. This is your therapy right here. This is your Yanov therapy. So what are we looking at here? Is this part of the sort of illustration of the storytelling of the affair? Oh, it's a board game. Wow.
Yeah, this really captured the imagination of the people. It really built the whole anti-Semite narrative. In fact, Theodore Herzl, up to this Dreyfus affair, was called an assimilation Jew, which most European Jews were. They were intermarrying. You know, the whole idea of a Jewish identity was starting to break down.
Right. Yeah.
Because they were assimilating.
Right. And Herzl, of course, being the head of the Zionist Congress.
Right. So after the Dreyfus affair, Herzl all of a sudden became the most stout Zionist in the world and the father of modern Zionism. And he attributed it to this. Because of the so-called ill treatment that this Jewish officer received.
So this is really
a story.
This is a pivotal event.
It was
the Dreyfus affair. These cards almost remind me of like the Illuminati cards. I don't know if you've seen those. It's like a cross between, well, they're not cards, it's a board game, but they look like the Illuminati cards. There's kind of a tarot vibe to these cards. This is interesting. Is that game still available? Can you purchase
No
it?
idea. I have no idea. Be a great collector's item, wouldn't it?
Totally would be. So here we go. This guy, Josh G's got a 41-page PDF. Is that it? Of this thing? Is that where you got a lot of the information from?
I got some good notes from him on it. And then you might want to, if you really want to kind of hear the official narrative, there's Search of History of the infamous Dreyfus Affair. So that gives you all the details of how this thing went down over about a decade period. And so as it says there's two camps, and supposedly two camps in France. I mean, really, there was a secularist camp and a traditionalist camp, conservative and liberal, but they also injected this anti-Dreyfusard, aka anti-Semite. So if you were anti-Dreyfus and thought that he was a spy, then that labeled you as an anti-Semite. Dreyfus was not a spy. Let's be very clear about that. He was loyal to his masters in France, which I would propose was the Rothschilds.
Yeah. That's probably fair to say. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit deeper. we have this guy Esterhazy, who shows up at the beginning of the film and is trying to pawn off the latest technology from France to Germany, so Germany could stay ahead of France in the
which
arms
is
race.
again a nonsense story,
right? Because that technology is already out there. It's almost like an open source,
right?
So now we have a guy who's peddling something that is widely available. So is the Esterhazy character a fake? Was he selling something besides the 150? Where does he fit in all this?
He's the front man to set up this accusation against Dreyfus. So he's the villain, and in the end, the official narrative labels him as the spy, not Dreyfus. So Dreyfus gets cleared eventually, and it's determined Esterhazy was the guy that did it. He's the villain. We should scroll down the page, because down at the bottom I have a whole section on Esterhazy. Let's just start with him to kind of familiarize everybody with this Esterhazy guy, and then we'll go into the. There it is. Who is Ferdinand Esterhazy? That's what he looked like. That's his real picture.
He looks like he just came right off the Castro district in San Francisco.
Absolutely. So I write that he was benefited from special treatment by the upper echelons of the army. He was the son of a general, an intelligence operative, a descendant of royalty, and a Rothschild classmate at Saint Cyr, who was protected his entire life and well awarded for doing his Chabos Goy part of the Dreyfus Affair. Esterhazy also worked in the statistics section, SR. He was intelligence, okay, deep state. The return of the source, return of the Rothschilds, establishes him in this little section that pulled this whole operation off. And Dreyfus was part of it too. He was not an artillery officer, never was, or if he was, it was very brief, just to kind of sheep dip him.
Right. Yeah.
When he was busted, the villain was also able to easily escape to England, where he lived the rest of his life in comfort and undisturbed. According to Wikipedia, now this is Wikipedia. I'm going to a pretty conventional source here. It says that through the influence of Zadok Khan, the chief rabbi of France, Esterhazy obtained assistance, aka money, from the Rothschilds in June 1994, right before Dreyfus's arrest. Why were the Rothschilds giving him money?
Yeah, good question.
That's a Jewish source.
Yeah.
At the same time, he was on good terms with the editor of the anti-Semitic newspaper La Libre Parole, which he supplied with information. So was he just an opportunist playing both sides against each other? Esterhazy, by the way, didn't need Zadok Khan because he was on good terms with the Rothschilds, having attended high school with Edmund. And that source of that is from the Return of the Rothschilds, pages 116, 117. So isn't it amazing that the big villain of this thing is buddies, the school mates, with the Rothschilds? What a coinky dink.
Yeah. Not surprising. So says here, Esterhazy, the Shakespearean scoundrel, as William James called him. There's no end of interesting material. So this guy's got a lot of layers.
A lot of attention given to him to create the narrative.
Yeah. So what happens next, right?
See, this little part's good too. So in the years before the Dreyfus Affair, if you were a Jewish officer in the army who'd been assaulted by a professional anti-Semite, say Edouard Drumont, we'll get into Edouard Drumont in a minute, in the press, the thing to do is to challenge your insulter to a duel. You had to find somebody to assist and serve as your second in a duel, not so easily, preferably a non-Jew to vouch for your honor. Well, it turned out there was just such a man who set up a concession. He could be hired out to serve as a second for Jewish officers whose honor had been doubted in the press, questioned in the press, attacked in the press. That man was none other than drumroll Ferdinand Esterhazy, the future villain of the affair. Esterhazy stood for Jewish officer Andre Cremot in a fake soap opera duel with the notorious anti-Semite Drumont. Incredibly, when suspicion fell on Esterhazy, he insisted on and was granted a trial and was quickly acquitted. And I write, we didn't realize military court martials are handed out by request. So the trial of Esterhazy to clear his name is part of the narrative. And then that builds on the idea that there's a conspiracy against Dreyfus that they're covering for Esterhazy.
So this is really layered.
Yep.
Really
classic,
okay.
Classic, but it's how they do it. I mean, this is what makes it such a good case study.
This is
because
they
don't have the sophisticated modern stuff they're doing now, where they can sheep dip people. I mean, we've come a long ways from this to Oswald to whatever's going on now.
But the effort that goes into creating a character, right? They're creating a character here. They're creating a character, a backstory, with the idea and the intent that this character is going to do something inside of this play, which helps advance some kind of narrative moving forward, right? This is pretty sophisticated stuff, actually.
All right, then they get the media involved. So, you have the hero of the affair, who's George Picard.
Yeah.
And after trying to clear Dreyfus, he was accused of forging the note that convinced him of Esterhazy's guilt. Even though he was head of counterintelligence, he was later arrested for forgery and convicted in yet another secret trial. It's a secret trial routine all over again that we see today.
So what role does this Drumont character play? Is he like false opposition?
Yep. You want to cover him? Let's go down and look at him.
Yeah. So he's the old version of Stormfront, right?
Sort of, yeah, and probably a little more sophisticated because the traditionalists at that time, they were in the game. They hadn't been completely wiped out as fake news yet. We're not quite at this point where we are today. So they had to do this little operation to impinge on the traditional conservative, so-called right wing in France with this fake story.
Right.
And so they used him. He's sometimes called the Pope of anti-Semitism and a fake guy.
Right.
He was instrumental as the character that the SR tipped off about the investigation of Dreyfus and subsequently broke the story in his rag. So the story is that the anti-Semite officers in the SR, which is totally deep state and a small group of intelligence officers in a republic that's dominated by Jewish influence.
Interesting.
The traditionalists are just hanging on by the threads. So this guy gets tipped off by somebody in SR. And so there's a curious entry on him from the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia. French anti-Semitic author and former deputy from Algeria, born in Paris in 1884. Drumont's ancestry is not Jewish, as has been sometimes asserted. So they just got to go in there and, make sure, hey, this guy may look Jewish, may kind of act Jewish, but he's not Jewish. So apparently it was necessary to try to specifically address this, given that some in that era suspected Drumont of being Jewish-controlled opposition. Some might think he looks Jewish, you decide. So Drumont is famous, or rather infamous, for writing one of the most anti-Jewish books of all time, The Jewish France. The book sold 150,000 copies in his first year. He started working on it under the encouragement of a Jesuit priest who he met in 1879. So a Jesuit priest?
Right.
It's a little sketchy too.
Right. Yeah.
Dulac bankrolled his newspaper, which was launched in 1892. His genealogy page
launched on 420, by the way.
420. His genealogy page states that Duluc converted him to Catholicism. Converted from what?
Exactly. From what? What was he before?
Just a little, way too many coinky dinks here. It's enemy action. After that, the third coincidence becomes enemy action. That's my theory on all this stuff. I've got a good meme that I sent to you just for shits and giggles. We should put that up there. I sent it to you right before it came on the air. It shows the guys, these me and the conspiracy theory boys receiving their
the
medals, confirmation medals for busting another conspiracy theory.
It was pretty funny. So is he from Algeria or is he from the Alsace region?
No, he's from Algeria.
Okay, so the French relationship with Algeria is really intense, especially later on. So that we do a whole nother show on that at some point. But all right, so he publishes.
But look where he studied. He studied at the Alsace Coordinate. According to the Alsace Coordinate's Wikipedia page, notable alumni include none other than Ferdinand Esterhazy, as well as a couple of the Rothschild classmates of his age. So he's in there. These are his classmates.
It's a club. It's part of the club.
Yeah, it's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Wow.
He before he published his radically anti-Semitic book, Drumont worked as a newspaper editor run by the Perret brothers, who were wealthy Jewish financiers. Really? I mean, doesn't that raise some questions?
Yeah. So you have a rabid anti-Semite working for Jewish financiers.
Probably Jewish himself, but converted to.
Well, on the surface, let's say he's not, but that is weird, right? It's weird. It's kind of like Steve Bannon in some ways. But that's
so in 1875, he gave the eulogy for this Jacob Pierre, which he compared favorably to Napoleon. He gave a eulogy praising his brother, Isaac. And according to the encyclopedia entry and elsewhere, we are to believe that he quit his job at the newspaper, and suddenly realizing newspapers were unduly controlled by Jews, just had an epiphany. He decides to publish a book. He is said to start working on the book in 1880. So he was on the Perez payroll for 6 intervening years, being paid by them. They don't even try to hide it.
Right. Wow. I mean, so this guy just feels like a lot of controlled opposition. That's what he is. He's a cutout.
Yeah, and then as mentioned above, Drumont and his associates were involved in highly publicized stage deception drama duels with Jewish military officers, where Esterhazy play acted as the second to these officers. Esterhazy again, and there was a fake duel with Drumont. So
he had his own fake duel. Drumont had his own fake duel.
Yeah, with a Jewish officer.
Right, and so Esterhazy
called him out.
Esterhazy's the guy that sets up the gun and everything, right? Like that's what the second does.
So it's this big strategy of tension ploy used to this day.
So they're controlling the entire thing. They're controlling this whole narrative.
And these institutions that they're coming down, this is important about this Lecce Coursinet. So Lecce Coursinet is like, it says since the mid-19th century, a large number of Protestants and Jewish students were accepted. The school had played this is what they say, the school on the website. The school played a prominent role in the emergence of Franco-Judaism in the creation of the Dreyfus Network. The Dreyfus Network, what are they talking about? And in the history of the League of Human Rights. I mean, maybe that's a Freudian slip, the creation of the Dreyfus Network, because that's exactly what it was, a network of schemers.
Wow. I mean, when you really pull it apart, it's brilliant and utterly dastardly. It's like, let's set up what you call the strategy of tension. We'll create an environment where we have these rabid French nationalists who are anti-Semitic, supposedly, but really those are our people. It's like we're creating the opposition,
right?
We're creating the strategy of tension, and we're creating this sympathetic role that the character, the community, the religion, and the group that they're railing against becomes the group that is getting the sympathy, the empathy in the situation. So, I mean, it's pretty brilliant, to be honest with you.
Well, they're able to bring these institutions, the media, the press, the power of the state.
Yeah,
it'd be like the Democrats setting up January 6th.
Yeah,
Very similar type of operation.
Yeah. So, and then what it does is it also suppresses any real criticism or any real exploration of the power dynamics. Right, suppresses the people that are really looking at, well, who's running the show here? Do we have a voice in this? So
here we have a little part on this Drumont again. His most surprising admirer was Theodor Herzl. Okay, Theodor Herzl we just mentioned. He's really the father of modern Zionism. He's the real heavyweight in the Zionist movement, and organizing that.
Yeah, and besides the Rothschilds, he's probably one of maybe 3 people that is responsible for the creation of Israel.
Yeah, he was Rothschild's agent.
Yeah,
he never lived to see the day that Israel was created. He kind of died young, but he was the launching pad for a lot of stuff. Organized these conferences and started having really after the Dreyfus affair. And so he was in Paris in the early 1890s as a foreign correspondent. And he wrote in his diary, "I owe Drumont much for my present freedom of conception because he is an artist." The admiration was mutual. When Herzl's Judenstaat, Jewish state, his descriptions of future national state for Jews appeared in 1896, it received what Herzl himself described as a highly flattering review in a paper edited by Drumont. So Drumont was supposed to be starting with his anti-Semite stuff in 1886.
Right. And
of course, some anti-Semites, at the time did support Jewish nationalism because Jewish nationalism was the flavor of the day for all peoples during that time. So you could be a right winger and support Jewish nationalism. I have to, I'll have to inject that here, but they're just pretty friendly guys. So what are the odds?
What would be the motivation for them to do that? Would the motivation be, yeah, we'll support that because you get to go to Israel? Is that the motivation?
Yeah, clear them out of Europe kind of mentality.
Right. So Emile Zola plays a role in this too.
Yeah. In fact, he's the guy that wrote the J'accuse.
Yeah.
J'accuse, I accuse.
Yeah.
So if you go through the History Channel documentary above, you'll realize that Emile Zola, who's a famous writer, was the actor who at precisely the right time levied the anti-Semitic accusations against the military plotters. So J'accuse implicated leading French politician in a deliberate fabrication of documents to frame Dreyfus and cover up their actions. First of all, why would they, what would be the motive of trying to frame Dreyfus, who's not even an artillery officer, for passing on secrets to the Germans? That was pretty much open source. And then holding secret trials that nobody got to really see. And then, Herzl at one point said that he was convinced of the virulence of anti-Semitism based on the trial. Well, he didn't see any trial. There's no trial. So just lie. They're lying constantly. They're misrepresenting reality.
Right.
You never saw a trial, Herzl.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So what else does Zola do here? Down here, it says able to play the victimization card as he was tried for libel. What's that all about?
He, accused the military officers, and they sued him for libel. And then Wikipedia tells us that he was convicted on February 23rd and removed from the Legion of Honor. But rather than go to jail, I guess, I don't know, maybe there's some pretty serious offenses going on with this trial besides just libel.
That's interesting. So February 23rd was yesterday. So we're kind of in the time zone here. So
rather than go to jail, he goes to England, and then while he's still walking around, then he walks around Paris for 5 months. Nobody picks him up. So how was he able to escape? Why wasn't he put in jail? Did they put Inspector Clouseau on the case? He only returned to France after Dreyfus' pardon, which was in 1899. And then of note, it was Dreyfus who was pardoned, not Zola. So he never got pardoned. But of course, the thing, I guess, blew over. So we already covered this. What was the purpose? Kickstarted the Zionist movement. So we already covered this.
Let's just go through it again, though, just for people who are coming on a little bit late. I'll read this paragraph here. The Dreyfus Affair kickstarted the Zionist movement. Before Dreyfus, Theodor Herzl claimed he supported Jewish assimilation into a Gentile society. But the Dreyfus Affair shook Herzl's view of the world and became completely enveloped in a tiny movement that called for the restoration of a Jewish state. Within the biblical homeland of Israel, Herzl quickly took charge in the leading movement.
Herzl's a Rothschild agent all the way.
Absolutely. He organized the first Zionist Congress in Basel, held on August 29th, 1897. Herzl was also highly responsible for getting the United States into World War I, because he has the meeting with the English, who's at that time is a Chamberlain. Basically, World War I.
Yeah, I think some of his successors did. Actually, Herzl died. He died kind of young. I think like in 1909 or something. So he did quite. But his people, the Zionist movement, he's like a figurehead. He's like the George Washington type character.
Right. Yeah. So whether it's Herzl or his successors, they pitch the idea that they're going to get the United States into the war,
right? And
England can claim victory, because the war was winding. They were winding down. The war was winding down, and
it's called the Balfour Agreements, and we could probably do a whole. We could probably do a whole show on that.
The Balfour Agreement is one of the worst things that happened to the West. It's terrible.
And if you don't think that's for real, there's a clip on YouTube that you can find. Just look it up, Google it, YouTube it. It shows the modern Baron Rothschild has the document of the Balfour Agreement, which he considers very precious.
By the way, it was Meyer Amschel Rothschild's birthday yesterday. Another 23rd or 23.
It says from Herzl's Wikipedia entry, Herzl came to believe through the trial that the officer was wrongly convicted. It may have been witnessing the trial of Dreyfus that converted him to the Zionist cause. And I write, but how do we know that could be true? Because the trial was held in secret in a closed courtroom. So this is the publicity, I guess. And then he went, the evidence for his innocence would only be discovered or revealed many years later. He was pardoned in 1899. So well after the Zionist movement was launched, Dreyfus was pardoned. So he wasn't cleared. There was no clarity on this. He just picked a side is all. People picked a side in this thing. He got involved in a false dialectic. Like Republicans and Democrats pick a side, and then it's all false. The whole notion is false.
Yeah.
What a better way to get the ball rolling, to frame a Jewish officer for treason, whip the crowd into a frenzy. And, it whipped up some anti-Semitism in and of itself, naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll just, it's like casting a, fish net in the ocean, right? You'll get some, you'll get some tuna or grouper along the way if you're looking for.
Yeah. So now they're able to point to the fact. I mean, look how the crowd reacted to all this stuff. They just an innocent man, and they just were sure he was guilty. But as usual, it's like all these incidents that we see today, what I call, which we've discussed, staged deceptions, is just to whip people into frenzy and get them off in the wrong direction from the truth.
Right. Interesting.
So let's go up to the part where let's talk about Dreyfus himself and let's go up the page.
There's another, we're doing good. There's another piece to this that I think we have to just take a quick look at. And that goes back to the Jacobins in the French Revolution and who was behind it, right? Who was behind the French Revolution? Who was funding the French Revolution? Well, I would, would say or suggest that it was the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds were very keen on eliminating their competition, right? So not only are they dealing with whatever current climate is taking place politically in France, putting the pieces in place in the future to, again, indemnify themselves for any future activity, I think they're also covering the tracks from the past so that people don't go down that path. They don't look at who was in charge of essentially burning down France and slaughtering thousands and thousands of people. So I think this is really pivotal. They're taking care of the past, the present, and the future in this event. Where do you want to go?
Okay, let's go up to the section on Dreyfus himself. We can kind of examine him. So
right there.
Who is Albert Dreyfus? Okay, here we go. So we talked about the artillery officer. So he revealed in his 1901 memoirs, 5 Years of My Life, that he was working in a military intelligence the entire time he was on the general staff. The Bureau had a tight-knit select staff of 20 or 30 officers. He entered St. Cyril War College and started with the general staff in 1893. As St. Cyril has major red flag deep state history, not just involving Frenchmen. So he was was transferred to the infantry. Up to this day, this false narrative claims he was just another artillery officer at the time of the affair. That's very important to state, at the time of the affair, the scene that we saw in the movie. Not true. It's not factual. And even Dreyfus in his memoirs talks about it, because nobody's double checking him.
Right. Right. So
it's not the kind of fact checkers there are today. That's why they have to shut everybody up, shut us down now, because there's people looking at this stuff. So his imprisonment at Devil's Island. So they send him out to this Devil's Island, this hot island down off the shore of Guyana, in South America.
Yeah. That's the place that the movie Papillon is based on.
Yeah. And so his account of his imprisonment of Devil's Island is farcical. He whined incessantly about the extreme heat. In his published prison diary for November the 4th, 1895, he wrote, "Terrific heat, over 45 degrees centigrade, 113 Fahrenheit. Did they give him a thermometer in Ile de Diablo? In today's day and age, we have a little thing called the internet. So facts like this can be checked. According to the Weather Underground," so I looked this up. I checked out the French Guiana's highest ever recorded temperature was 100 Fahrenheit in 2015. In fact, the weather, especially on the seacoast, is balmy and breezy with maximums in the 80s. Nights are low. So that's a kind of a comfortable place.
Oh, that's
got a nice little
spring.
breeze coming in.
That's spring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So incredibly, and Winter Watch would say conveniently, a special law was passed on February the 9th, 1895. And this is the power of the state. This shows who's really run the show. It's not these traditionalists. It's the secularists. They restored the island in French Guiana as a place of fortified deportation. Devil's Island actually refers to several islands and locations. The only isle where Dreyfus was alleged to have been held never housed more than 12 political prisoners at one time, and Alfred Dreyfus was the first. Apart from the guards, he was the only inhabitant of the island, where he stayed in a stone hut of 4 meters by 4 meters. Secret trials. Send him to an island where he's the only guy.
Okay.
So our take, was anybody really on that rock? In 1896, the drama continued, the story of Dreyfus escaping and being spotted. To cover for this, Alfred's brother, Matthias, inexplicably claimed to have planted the escape subterfuge. As Lindemann, one of the big biographers of this stuff, historians, wrote, anybody who reads Dreyfus' memoirs or his letters to his wife can hardly avoid the sense of reading a bad novel.
Yeah, nothing adds up here.
Yeah, filled with mawkish and self-congratulatory passages. Much of it is filler, in which he's just writing in his diary to complain about waiting for the mail to come. If Samuel Beckett had written a play about Dreyfus's years in prison, he probably would have called it Waiting for Mail. This hokey-looking soap opera photo with an early version of a set screen was alleged to be Dreyfus, apparently dressed for a cooler day on Devil's Island, and was put out for public consumption in 1899. Look at this picture. Come on.
That's ridiculous.
It's a theater set.
It looks like it's on a, I was gonna say it looks like it's on a stage.
You know, they don't have this CGI to really make it look real like they do today.
No, but they were capable of doing things with photos. They were much clever with superimpositions than we understand.
What's the friggin' shadow over there? What's that coming from? I mean,
it's supposed to be coming from this, but is it coming at the right angle? I don't know.
No windows on the little hut there. Really? They couldn't just cut him a little window, let the breeze in? And he's sitting out there in that kind of fairly warm garb with a helmet on.
So which one is Dreyfus?
The guy on the right sitting down.
That's Dreyfus.
Yeah. And that's apparently the guard or the warden or whatever you want to call it. It was another inside.
I'm just not sure who's who here. This is very confusing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Epstein.
Epstein Island. Yeah. All right. So I guess the question is, was he ever really there?
No.
Yeah. That doesn't feel like it.
At the right is a photo of Alfred Dreyfus posing with his brother, Matthias, shortly after his reunion. The media described him as wrecked, frail man health-wise as a result of his Devil Island ordeal. You decide. I mean, there he is with his brother. He looks pretty good.
Smiling.
Yeah, he doesn't look sick and frail.
All right. So the villain Esterhazy may have been a double agent. The publication of notes by Schwarzkoppen. And so Schwarzkoppen was the guy inside the embassy, right?
Yeah.
And then supposedly the maid, who is a spy, was able to cull his torn notes from the trash can and then bring them back, and they were able to tape them all together, which is what they built their case on. Is that right?
Yeah, she was able to get the notes of this guy and send it to this SR unit, and then the SR unit in turn covered it all up. Really? Why? Let's just decide to just frame this Dreyfus or so-called artillery officer who's actually in our unit. I mean, stupid stuff.
All right, so this thing is really tangled. It's very tangled. So then my question would be, what role did the Germans play in all this?
Well, right? let's read a little bit about this Schwarzhofen guy, Schwarzkoppen, we saw in the open scene, because they kind of created a narrative around him. So let's see, where is that? Further on down the page. Picard, he's the hero.
We got Zola.
Okay, back up. Yeah, back up. And so you got it's in this section right here. The letter. This kind of explains the operation.
Oh yeah, so this is the maid's work right here.
Yeah, so Schwarzhofen tears the note up and throws it in a trash can. Notice there's not any wrinkles. Really, you just kind of take a piece of paper and you just rip it and just nice little even rips like that and throw it in the garbage, and then the maid finds it and then you paste it back together again. what a hokey looking torn letter.
It's pretty intense.
I mean, practice that a lot. I just practiced tearing letters. I could, no way I could have an even cut like that.
Yeah.
Unless I had a knife or, some kind of like a shredder to cut it.
Right.
So that's hokey. But anyway, I was called the border owl, addressed to the German intelligence colonel von Schwarzkopf. The good colonel also conveniently tossed away a letter to his homosexual lover. So they interjected the fact that these guys are a bunch of homosexuals at the German attaché. I just had to throw that in there. And at the time, that would have been kind of inflammatory.
Yeah.
It's just like another dig at the Germans, sort of. Oh, you guys are just got a bunch of flamers in there running your military attaché. And so he's got his homosexual lover, an Italian military attaché named Alexandru Panizzard. Then just out of the blue, they just happen to reference the scandal of a D. So they're writing love letters to each other. And in the letters, they're writing about D, not Dreyfus, D. And the letter ended with, "Don't exhaust yourself with too much buggery." So just more stupid shit that we're asked to believe. Then beginning in 2013 were contents of the secret dossier used in the behind closed door military trial of Dreyfus. It was in another incredulous exchange between the lover boys, where Alexander supposedly informed his lover that if Dreyfus is brought in for questioning, they must both claim they never had any dealing with that Jew. Clearly, no one ever could ever know what happened with him. That's sort of weird. What does that even mean?
I don't know.
It just looks to me like some kind of weird misdirection.
Yep.
And so the RIP document was then passed into the hands of yet another wicked anti-Semite henchman, Joseph Henry. Henry then determined that the spy must be an artillery officer, we've covered that, whose name started with the letter D. After handwriting analysis, it led to Dreyfus and he was arrested. So that's how they got this. They matched this handwriting of this letter that the maid pulled out of the trash. The lover boy letters.
Right, the lover boy letters. D might refer to something else.
And so note that when the case flipped against the plotters, Henry was supposedly jailed and found the next day in his cell with his throat slashed. So they're playing hardball.
That's convenient.
Yeah, they're playing hardball. Henry was a SR counterintelligence, a unit we discussed in the article. In the hours before his death, he wrote his superior, General Gonsi, "I absolutely must speak to you. You know whose interest I acted." Well, he's a Rothschild agent too, but they sheep dipped him and turned him into a patsy, cut his throat in prison. Nasty. He's writing a superior officer. Hey, what are you guys doing?
Interesting.
So next we're asked to believe that halfway through a bottle of rum and midway through another letter to his wife, Henry wrote, "I am like a madman," and proceeded to slit his own throat with a shaving razor. Was Henry an actor, or was he a patsy set up for this agitprop? So we could probably talk a little bit about Alsace and sort of the connections there.
Sure.
So Alsace was it's kind of a mixed German-French region. It's now in France, but after the Franco-Prussian War, it was annexed as war booty by the Germans, part of the German Empire, and became a source of, bad feelings between the Germans and the French.
Yep.
And my son and I went in there, kind of did the wine tours, and they grow a lot of wine there. And we went in and had some wine with the family that had a vineyard, and up on the wall there was a family tree going back to the 1500s that they had done. Totally mixed German and French. These people are like a special population of mixed. people.
Yep. Yeah. And as you and I were talking before the show, I was actually born in that region. I'm not French, Alsatian, but I was born in Verdun, which is where they have this just god awful battle, World War I, one of the most gruesome, bloody battles in history. And that was one of the big theaters for World War I, was that area, and who was going to, kind of control that region. And I don't know if it was ever really
the French got it
settled
back
militarily. They did get it back, but they got it back, I think, as part of the Balfour Agreement. Right?
No, they got it back. They got it back after World War I, so that was restored back to France.
Yeah, and isn't that's post Balfour, right? I mean, the Balfour Agreement comes in and begins to.
But the thing that happened with Alsace is that basically even Hitler said he said, "I have no territorial claims in Alsace." He didn't want to create any agitation over this. He says it's French, and it probably is mostly French because it had been kind of part of the French Republic for a long time. But a funny area, another one of those funny areas, like the Donbass or whatever, the Danzig and the Polish corridor, places like that, hot spots. Right. But because it's a hot spot, it tended to be a hotbed for spies and espionage and radical type stuff. And so the statistical section, the SR, should be noted that it was headed by Lieutenant Colonel Jean Sandier, a graduate of Saint Cyr and an Alsatian from Mulhouse. It just so happened that Mulhouse is the hometown of Albert Dreyfus and his wealthy family. So Dreyfus came from a wealthy family, connected family.
Well,
he wasn't just some nobody.
We could probably bring that family line forward. And I don't know if there's a connection there, but it probably wouldn't be too hard to find one with the Dreyfus Fund.
I don't know.
The Dreyfus, and of course Julia Louis Dreyfus, who was on Seinfeld.
Right.
She's the daughter of the guy who has the Dreyfus Fund and the face of the lion and everything. Right. That'd be an interesting journey to see if we can make that connection.
So the Sandier guy did not live to see the end of the Dreyfus Affair. He was conveniently struck by general paralysis. He had to leave active service in December 1896, succumbing to his illness before the scandal came to light. So the SR was supposedly supported by secret affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Virtually all observers characterize these operations as deep state, utilizing dirty tricks and misdirection. SR usually had 4 officers. One of the notable features of the SR was that it was outside the military chain of command, reporting to and taking orders from a civilian, the Minister of War. So that's how they can run these operations. They just put a civilian of their choosing in there. Thus, SR was under the direct civilian control, making it kind of a lost our screen.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'll just wrap this little part up.
Because
the Alsatian. You got to dive?
No. But I just kind of sleuthed some info here that we could throw into our discussion regarding Dreyfus and Alsace. So come back here and then I'll jump to the next page.
Okay, so it's a kind of a political mole burrowed inside the French army. And did they operate on behalf of anti-Semites, as the conventional narrative claims, or for others, say the interest of the hyper-wealthy Zionist Rothschilds, who were a major presence in Paris in this day? And talk about the Jews were already overrepresented by 15-1, very small part of the population. You had 3% of the officer corps. So the scene there in that movie was just total nonsense.
It's all Hollywood, patently false.
Yeah,
so
just made up stuff.
Yeah. So the
we're just getting used to this idea of having Jewish officers around.
And it's good.
You guys
it's
are
good
really
for
a
us.
rarity here. You're just going to have to be patient. It's just more lies.
Right. All right. I'll tell you where I went. Because I had a sense that I was right, and I was right. So this is the actress Julia Scarlett Elizabeth Louis Dreyfus from Seinfeld. We all know her, right? From Seinfeld.
Yeah, kind of a cute guy.
Early life, Louis Dreyfus was born in New York City on January 13th, 1961. Her American-born mother, Judith Nee Lefevre, was a writer and special needs tutor, and her French-born father, Gerard Louis Dreyfus, chaired the Louis Dreyfus Company. Her paternal grandfather, Pierre Louis Dreyfus, was president of the Louis Dreyfus Group. He was a member of a Jewish family from Alsace. He served as a cavalry officer and member of the French resistance during World War II. She is also a great-great-granddaughter of Leopold Louis Dreyfus, who in 1851 founded the Louis Dreyfus Group, a French commodities and shipping conglomerate, which members of her family still control and is related to Alfred Dreyfus,
what a small world
of the infamous Dreyfus Affair. How about that?
What a small world. Yeah,
So,
I mean, these people had big families.
Yeah. So we could trace Elaine all the way back to this scandal that we're talking about. It was really weird. I had a feeling that she was connected. And as I was sort of poking around for the show, I just put her name into Google, and she says, this is her quote, that she doesn't remember anything she did with Seinfeld. Like, she has no memory of her time on Seinfeld, which I thought was really odd. Like, what's that about?
Wow.
You know, does she have some form of
some kind of MK Ultra?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Right? Is she like, you know, partitioned? Like, that's a really odd statement to say. You know who's like that as well is Ringo Starr. But
anyway, that information you found is really important fact about who that family was,
right?
And how and what a Louis Dreyfus.
That's a major family.
It was a major family. So of course they were friends with Rothschild.
That's a Rothschild. That's a Rothschild level family.
Yep. Socially, who knows? Maybe familial ties. Going to school.
Right. So they're like a version of the Goldsmiths, and there may be even some intermarriage as well between the two groups.
And so you got this guy you can just pull into your little scheme very easy, and he'll go along with the whole program. Good soldier, carry it all out.
And he'll be rewarded. He'll be rewarded too. You know, you have this very significant monetary fund that comes out of that family, and who knows?
And he goes down in the history books as some kind of a big good guy and hero.
He's a hero.
Make movies about him.
He's a hero, and movements need martyrs, right? And he's a martyr in a lot of ways, even though he doesn't die. Theoretically, 5 years of his life are taken from him.
But that's the whole affair. I mean, nobody's really challenged it. There's hardly any good revisionism on it.
It's an important story because it sets everything up that's going to happen, right? Everything, like with Herzl, the Zionist Congress, World War I, the Balfour Agreement, the partitioning of the nation state of Israel, the United States being brought into World War I, on top of taxation, the Federal Reserve being created, and then bringing them into the war so they can run up the debt very quickly. It's all connected here. It's all connected. And then being able to...
And very key to the victimization narrative. And
right. That's a big part of it. And retroactively, it keeps people from looking at who was behind the French Revolution and how they really just completely torched the country and took away the ruling class, who were the competition for the Rothschilds and some of these other families. Keeps you from doing that, keeps you from questioning what's happening in the present. And then moving forward, it's an ironclad, prison cell that if you go there and start to question these people, well, you're an anti-Semite, right? You can't even have the conversation, so right. This is an important piece of history.
I think something we should dwell on, since we got about 15 more minutes, is this Guardian story.
Is that in there too? Is that on the same page?
No, I sent it to you separately. It's right. It's in your.
Is that on Twitter?
Yeah.
Let me go there.
You ever looked at that?
Let me see.
The hacking disinformation team mediate meddling in elections. Team Georgie.
Let's see what we got here.
So Team Georgie was exposed by undercover investigators by The Guardian and a slew of mainstream European publications. Busted these guys. Just really amazed me, surprised me that they would.
Is this the GDI index thing?
No.
All right, hold on.
What it is a bunch of Israelis that are in. They got offices right out of Tel Aviv. They've been operating in 33 different elections. Remember, you wrote me back and you sent me the thing 33. You know.
Oh right.
Mason.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
so the group sells hacking services, access to a vast army of fake social media profiles. Evidence unit was behind disinformation campaigns around the world. The mastermind claims covert involvement in 33 presidential elections. A team of Israeli contractors claim to have manipulated more than 30 elections around the world using hacking, sabotage, automated disinformation on social media has been exposed in a new investigation. The unit was run by Tal Hannon, a 50-year-old former Israeli special forces operative who now works privately using the synonym Georgia, and appears to have been working under the radar in elections in various countries for more than 2 decades. How do you get away with this? They accuse the Russians of interfering with elections, and then you got a group of Israelis, well-funded Israelis, messing around in 33 different elections over 20 years, just sitting in an office outside of Tel Aviv. You know, where's the Mossad? Didn't they know about these guys? How about MI6? How about the CIA, NSA? This is a big story. He's unmasked by international consortium of journalists.
Wow, that's crazy.
Undercover footage and documents leaked to The Guardian. I'm amazed The Guardian broke the story. It just flabbergasted me. Extraordinary details about how disinformation is weaponized by Team Georgie. I mean, I swear, these are the kind of guys I used to run into on Reddit. When I was active on Reddit,
yeah,
they had these fake accounts, bots, somebody probably running a bunch of sock puppets that really gravitated on me. I was somebody they wanted to deal with. It just kind of made life miserable for me over there. And I'd put up an article and they'd downvote it or go off the front page within minutes.
Right.
That type of thing. Eventually they got me banned. That's these guys or somebody like them.
So they have a software package from Advanced Impact Media Solutions. It controls a vast army of thousands of fake social media profiles on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Telegram, Gmail, Instagram, and YouTube.
This is the distorted reality that we're dealing with. These guys are part of it, probably really big part of it.
Well, I think this comes out of the whole Project 8200 thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And for people that don't know what Project 8200 is, it is a special unit that is peeled off from the IDF, and there's an interface with the Mossad, and it's kind of like the best and the brightest of their cyber geeks, and then they train them, and they have this elite kind of cyber unit. And what happens with 8200 is, they'll do their service, right? But then they get farmed out. And Paul Singer is a big supporter of Project 8200. He'll take Project 8200 guys and bring them into the United States and place them in corporations inside the United States.
Yeah, and Harvey Weinstein was using these guys too.
Yep. Yeah. So it's kind of like,
that's what he got in trouble with, because he was using them to muscle his girlfriends, or I shouldn't say girlfriends, the girls that he raped.
Yep. So I wouldn't be surprised if this has some connection with Project 8200, which is like an incubator.
It has to. It has to. How can they keep this under wraps? How does that work? In today's world, that all of a sudden it's broken. See, it says reporters from 30 outlets, including Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and Alsace, the project part of a wider investigation into the disinformation industry has been coordinated by Forbidden Stories, French nonprofits whose mission is to pursue the work of assassinated, threatened, or jailed reporters. The undercover footage is filmed by 3 reporters who approached Team George posing as prospective clients. More than 6 hours of recorded meetings. I mean, Project Veritas isn't doing anything like this.
No.
Really going into that. This is the crime syndicate. This is the crime syndicate that I talk about and envision as running the world. This is
I think that they are right. If they're not at the center, they're not far from it. I remember back when I started to really dive into this stuff at another level, like 2011, 2010, 2011, and I stumbled across there are 2 companies. One is Verint, and Verint was being outsourced by the NSA to run all of their pipeline, right? So if the NSA was going to do any kind of sleuthing, listening in, watching, whatever, right?
Privatize it, right?
Yeah, and collating it and sending all that info to the fusion centers. They outsourced all of that to Verint, which is an Israeli-based company. I think the other one is Nalus, N-A-L-U-S. And I'm like, what is going on here? You're taking a company that is it's not even national. Like, it has no vested interest with the United States and the military industrial complex here. It's coming out of another country, and you're getting a third party to run your pipeline.
Yeah, right.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yep.
Because you think that party is just going to be completely hands off, and everything is just hermetically sealed, and everything that goes from our conversation here today between one another.
Well, the thing
goes right into the database.
The CIA, if you're a CIA officer, you're subject to the Constitution. These guys aren't.
Right.
They're outside the law. They can do anything they want.
Right. So if you're Verint and you've got this deal with the NSA, would you just like siphon off everything, like have copies of everything going to your data centers?
Yeah, you could just go completely rogue, and send it back and then send it back to the Mossad and these Israelis, because it's hands off. Right, they're kind of hands off too, and so that, of course, then you got all these Unit 82 guys end up in the tech industry. Google, absolutely. This is what Paul Singer uses American taxpayer dollars to help fund the offshoot programs of Unit 8200 in Israel, so they can take these people back and bring them to the United States and place them at a high level inside of the tech companies. That's all Paul Singer stuff. Right? He's not doing anything for Americans. Yeah, then they could just run black ops. The Dreyfus Affair was a black op. Absolutely, that's a good example of it. And they could just take this to the nth degree because they've got the technology, and they're hidden and they're not being exposed. Unbelievable that they exposed these guys all of a sudden. My jaw dropped when I saw the story. I think it's bigger than the Pfizer Project Veritas. Well, so tilt your camera down just a little bit, Russ. You're there. You go, right there. Perfect. You bring up a good point, because there has been a little bit of controversy kind of brewing in the aftermath of the whole Pfizer thing, and there is something that I do agree with a little bit here. Is, does James O'Keefe and Project Veritas do some good work? One can make a case of yes. But are they doing that work as a result of not doing other work that could be even more impactful? Right? Like, oh yeah, so we'll get some of this low-hanging fruit. But what about what's beyond? And it's mostly political. Right. And that's the thing that I always felt about WikiLeaks. I always felt like WikiLeaks was a limited hang. And Assange was an inside guy.
and that they would release material that would be explosive, but the material wouldn't go as far as maybe perhaps it could. So it always felt like WikiLeaks was just a controlled op, and it was a drip line, and they would release things through it which looked inflammatory and looked like they were revealing bits and pieces of the truth.
Well, WikiLeaks probably did have an impact on the election.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt it had an impact on the
I
election.
can understand why the Democrats and Hillary would be mad about it.
No doubt. But if you look at who Trump is and who's in his corner, right? You
probably this outfit out of Israel.
You just start to do the math.
The whole thing.
You start to do the math.
Probably did the whole thing.
But then you had the kid from where was he from? Kansas. The one who supposedly was round up and killed in Washington D.C. The one who worked for the DNC and supposedly leaked all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Jewish kid.
Yeah, I think he was a complete plant, total plant.
Yeah. His parents really acted weird.
That whole thing was so bizarre. So bizarre. By the way, he went to Creighton, which is a Jesuit school, and had spent a couple of times hanging out in Israel on a kibbutz, right? So he has some interesting ties. He just feels like somebody who's inserted, like he's probably some, kind of agent, working for, the Trump people. Or
it was all kind of an incredulous story that somebody mugged him and killed him on the street.
It doesn't add up at all. None of that story adds up. It sounds to me like he was extracted. He's doing something somewhere else, and that whole thing with this,
because they tried to make it look like Hillary had him killed. That was part of that narrative too, right?
Right. That's part of it. Yeah. So
I'm not defending Hillary, but obviously she's a target for all kinds of stuff like this, dirty tricks, election interference.
But let's go one step further too. This is an interesting piece and gets to right back to the Dreyfus Affair. So what comes out of that whole WikiLeaks piece in October? James Alefantis and Comet Ping Pong Pizza, right? That all comes out during that. That's part of the dump. And then you have all these people now looking at Pizzagate. And Pizzagate
because they find real stuff. They don't just have to make everything up. They find real dirt to dump.
Right. But what happened post Pizzagate? People got silenced, right? Yep. They had this guy that went there and supposedly shot the place up, including the computer that had all the information on it. And by the way, I think the guy that did it, he's the son of like some freaking FBI agent. It's really weird. It's really sketchy.
I have an article on it. I'm trying to recall the article,
but it goes right back to the Dreyfus Affair.
Yeah.
So now you can't talk about Pizzagate. Oh, that's one of those crazy, wacky Trump Q conspiracy theories. So they let the cat out of the bag and like, oh yeah, there's a there. And then what do? They discredit the there so that everybody moving forward.
But now they've so overworked accusing the conspiracy theorists that the conspiracy theorists have been proven to be right on so much. I mean, fast forwarding to the present, they've really overworked that message where it's almost like a badge of honor to be a conspiracy theorist. I call them confirmed conspiracy theorists.
A friend of mine sent this. Let me see if I can cue this up. It's a really interesting piece of video that he sent me yesterday. I'm gonna try to play it here. If I can transfer the okay, here we go. Let me do this. Let me do this. Drop this here. Hold on. Message. All right. I'm going to play this because This is how desperate these people are to control information now at this point. And listen to what the reporter here does with this woman. Let me see if I can find this thing.
Yeah, that stuff's not working anymore. It's backfired on them because they've really overdone it.
Maybe try one more time. It's in fact, it is absolutely, oh, here it is. Okay, good. I got it. It's absolutely hilarious. It's totally hilarious. Let me see if I can pop this up.
And did you see my meme? You should pop that up there too before we wrap up. I love that meme. It's in your Twitter feed.
A second.
For a little levity. It's so good.
Okay, we'll end on that. I gotta play this clip because this is what they're trying to do. And you can see that this is going to be an exercise in futility. There's a woman in Ireland, and they're passing this bill in Ireland. It's basically a controlled speech bill. And the reporter seems to be a mainstream media reporter. And watch the grilling he puts her through here. This is a good one. Check. This is only 2 minutes, but this gets into why they're not going to be successful with this. Pretty clear. This is probably one of Klaus Schwab's little lackeys here. All right, so check this out.
Pivoting just very briefly to the government strategy against misinformation, which would be your area as the Minister for Media, will that apply to kind of fake news by mainstream news outlets as well? For example, there was a protest over the weekend and official organisers were saying it was 50,000, and this was repeated by several publications, whereas that was more than twice what the official Garda estimate was. That would kind of fall under the purview of fake news or misinformation, one would imagine. Would the government be going after, say, the Irish Times or RTE if they publish something false?
This working group is a direct result of a recommendation of the Future of Media Commission. So it's to look at countering misinformation that is damaging to Irish society and to democracy. There are key stakeholders involved. There will be public consultation, but it's about looking at emerging threats when it comes to misinformation. It's a global issue. It's not just an Irish issue. It's looking at what exactly is misinformation, what is disinformation. It's looking at the application of the EU.
She's got those machine gun eye blinks.
Disinformation. It's looking at the application, and
reading off the
Digital
script.
Services Act. So it's that's what this is. It's a I suppose
they're script readers.
Watch this.
But that would include the mainstream media as well. That the government would put equal scrutiny on, mainstream publications and broadcasters as they would on like individual citizens.
All news agencies will be consulted on this. That's part
consulted.
of I suppose the terms of reference of this working group.
Sure, but not consulted. I mean, would the scrutiny be on them that if a mainstream publication publishes something that's false, that this misinformation strategy will be there to counteract that as well as, say, random people on Telegram groups?
This is about fact checking and assisting in fact checking and so.
Now she's smiling. See,
yeah, that's perfect for my meme. Put my meme up.
See, people are getting wise to this shit.
Yeah, of course.
And
it worked for a while. It worked for a while, but they've running out of steam.
He was not going to allow her to get off with a pat answer.
Yeah.
And then finally at the end, she kind of cops to it by smiling because she knows that he caught her and she doesn't give a shit. All right, here we go. There's your meme. It's funny. What the hell did these guys do to get all those medals? That's what I want to know.
Me and the boys receiving another confirmed conspiracy theory award.
Like, what war were these guys in that I wasn't paying attention to?
I'm going to put my work tonight on our work tonight in Dreyfus. Well, we're going to get an award. We're going to get a medal.
It must be millennials. They got a medal for everything. No, I'm just kidding. I love the millennials. I have to play a little Don Rickles there. Well, Russ, another one in the books. And that was a good one. I had no, I knew about it, had no idea how deep this thing went, and you tear it apart, and it is fucking genius what they did. Genius. It created everything.
Yeah, go read the Discovery History Channel version of this event. Maybe kind of fill in the details a little bit, because we kind of came at it backward through the network.
They controlled everything. And then I guess the cherry,
and then the clip that you played. I mean, what a piece of propaganda that was.
Oh, it's total Hollywood propaganda, and setting it up very early in the film. That Dreyfus was an
Hello, I'm Mr. Esterhazy. I'm here to sell you the specs on an artillery gun that's already out there. We're selling to the Serbians and down in the Balkans, but I can sell you this secret information.
We don't
the whole premise, even the whole premise of the thing is just stupid, and people bought it hook, line, and sinker.
We don't reward corruption. What if I'm already corrupt?
Then it turns out the guy's a homosexual.
Right. Right. And then there's the maid. There she is, right at the beginning of the movie. They're letting you know.
Yeah, that's the early form of propaganda for the gullible.
Yeah. Well, Hollywood is good at that. There's actually, I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you seen the Rothschild movie?
The new one that just came out?
No.
Oh, the old one. Yeah.
The old one.
There's a couple. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah. And
There's
man,
some funny scenes in that.
they're just the, looking after humanity in that movie. That's their role. They're kind, and they're just making sure that, they're taking care of us. Right. So anyway, you can find more Russ's work at winterwatch.net. And Russ, you have any plans for the weekend? Hang out?
Like I said, I'm feeling better, so I'm getting, once spring comes, I'll get active, feeling better, enjoying life more.
Cool. Good. All right, Russ, we'll see you in a month, and I know I'll see you over there on Twitter. But you take good care of yourself, okay?
Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.
That is the great Russ Winter. And he always joins us on the final Friday of every month. And, I know sometimes, we'll get into things and people will say, oh, that's hateful. This is not hateful, folks. We're not trying to spread any hate. We're not trying to, indulge in any kind of ism. What we're really trying to do is pull apart certain pieces of history. And sometimes those pieces of history have certain individuals and players who are advancing their cause. And and today we talked about the Rothschilds, and we talked about this whole idea to combat anti-Semitism, and they're being proactive. They're setting it up, right? They're setting it up. And I've had discussions with people who are Jewish, and they're like, I have nothing in common with the Rothschilds. These people don't represent me. They don't represent my faith. Okay. So I want to be clear about that. We're looking at a particular group, and a group within that group that we're trying our best to back engineer how reality is stage managed, how public perception is stage managed, and really for the benefit of the people that are doing that. And in this case, we can see it right down to the fact that Mr. Dreyfus came from a very wealthy family, and indeed lived on, and his wealth spread to the United States with the Dreyfus Fund, which is a huge money fund. I mean, think of a version of BlackRock, an older version of BlackRock. And that's how it all pans out. All right, I got to get out of here early today. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Once again, thanks to Russ for another great show. and from his archives, and the recent archive, February 17th, of winterwatch.net. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back on Sunday night with Sunday Night Astro Live. In the meantime, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to stamp what's possible. Mods, thank you for your work. Appreciate all your work there over on the chat side of things.